Inspiring interviews with today's top landlords. This is the Rental Income Podcast. And now, Dan Lane.
Zeke, let's start off with you giving us the real quick Cliff Notes version of your investing story.
Yeah, absolutely, Dan. So I started investing 4 years ago. I bought my first duplex and did some value add. I saw that worked and just have continued to buy properties, and today I own a little over 50 doors.
Wow, that's pretty awesome. Zeke figured out something that worked for him, and he just kept doing it over and over again. On the podcast today, we're going to take a look at Zeke's portfolio. We'll figure out exactly what he's buying. I want to see what the neighborhoods are like, if there's a certain bedroom and bathroom combination that he likes. I know personally, if I had tried to buy as many properties as Zeke has bought over the last 4 years, it would have been tough. I mean, there just aren't a lot of properties for sale right now. So I want to find out how he's finding deals. Zeke also has a really unique way that he's managing his properties. We'll get into that, and we'll talk about his financing. Joining us on the podcast today from Columbus is Zeke Liston. We'll take a real quick break to thank our sponsors. We'll come right back, and we'll talk to Zeke. I've had tenants that have either broken their leases or stopped paying rent, and I'm sure you know that this can be very expensive. It's very easy for the cost to exceed the amount of money that you're holding for a security deposit, and because of this risk, I started using the guarantors to guarantee my leases. The guarantors protects your rental income against rent defaults, vacancy loss, lease breaks, holdovers, and more. And this is all at no cost to you. Your tenants pay for the insurance premium. If you want to learn more about their platform, check out my bonus episode from September 15th, 2022. It's titled, Is This Better Than a Security Deposit? If you're ready to sign up, you can enroll within minutes by visiting theguarantors.com. Again, that's theguarantors.com. It's a lot of work to find a really good rental property, and when you actually find that property, you want to make sure you're working with a lender that can get that loan closed. The lender that I recommend is Chaley Ridge from Ridge Lending Group. She's a nationwide lender, and her specialty is helping investors finance rental properties. She has a ton of loan programs, and she can find something customized to you for your situation. If you want to find out more or you're ready to get started today, just go to ridgelendinggroup.com. That's RIDGE lendinggroup.com. NMLS 42056.
Rental Income Podcast.
Tell me about your portfolio.
The majority of my portfolio is duplexes. So I would say probably 60% of my units comprise of duplexes. I own a couple quads, a 6-unit, and a 10-unit.
Is there a certain bedroom and bathroom combination you like?
Not necessarily. The market that I'm in, Columbus, Ohio, is more competitive, so I just kind of take what the market gives me. The 10-unit that I own are all 1-bed, 1-baths, and the majority of the duplexes that I own are 3-bed, 1-baths.
Okay, so everything seems to rent pretty good, it sounds like. And how old are the properties?
The majority of the properties that I own are built in the early 1900s. Columbus has a lot of older properties. I think the newest property that I own was built in 1970.
Okay. And have they been updated? Or when you're buying the properties, are you renovating them and kind of bringing them up to today's standards?
A lot of them have had some upgrades throughout the years. Maybe there's a new roof, maybe there's new windows, new furnaces, but I'm also doing a lot of value add myself. So I'm more so focusing maybe on the cosmetic upgrades, making the property go from a 1980s look to a more trendy look.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also doing some of the larger CapEx renovations, but I would say for the most part, these older homes have been updated in one way or the other over the years.
And what would you say is your average rent? And I realize you have a pretty big range between 1-bedrooms and single families, but what would you say is the average rent for your portfolio?
I would say the average is around $1,000 a unit.
Okay. Solid. And are you managing everything yourself?
I am and I'm not. So I do not hire a third-party manager, but I've implemented some systems and I've made some family hires to where the management is within the family. So I have my eyes on the portfolio. I'm making some calls, but for the most part, I'm pretty hands off at this point, and I have some family members helping out with the management.
Interesting. So how does that work? Like, what are your family members doing?
So I have one family member who's doing most of the project management and the maintenance calls. So I utilize a online property management software. So anytime that there's any maintenance requests, the tenants can put those through on the online software, and that'll go directly towards my maintenance tech. And then he'll go out there and take care of any issues. And then I have another family member who's mostly focused on the tenant relations, lease renewals, responding to any sort of questions that the tenants might have on the property, and that's primarily what they do. And then every now and then, I'll come in, make calls on potential capex expenses, renovations, and then I also have a assistant who helps me with the leasing of the properties. So whenever the tenants have any sort of maintenance request or even questions, they will just go to their online portal and they can submit those maintenance requests online. And then they can also text the office number, which is attached to our online management software. And then once we get any sort of maintenance requests come through, an email is automatically sent to the maintenance tech.
Wow. Okay. So the maintenance software is routing whatever the trouble is to the correct person, and then your team basically just handles it.
Correct. Yep, that's right.
Yeah. And then what about for rent collection?
So rent collection, we are 100% online. So I guess I should rephrase that. We're mostly online. So most all of the tenants can make their payments online. They can connect their bank account and the payments can be made through this management software company. And then for the tenants who still want to pay check, they can drop their check off at a CVS, and the management software that we use has a partnership with CVS where the tenants can submit their payments, whether that's check or cash, to CVS, and it'll be deposited into the management account.
I think the way that you have things set up is really smart, because when I see people that get burned out from owning rentals, it's because of dealing with tenants, that they maybe have difficult tenants or they have a lot of maintenance stuff coming up and they just get fed up. But it sounds like you've taken yourself out of talking to tenants and you're just putting the deals together, you're finding properties and kind of letting everything run on its own. Would you say that's right?
Yeah, and it wasn't always that way, Dan. That's taken a couple years to implement these different systems and get some of these hires, but that's exactly right. I'm pretty busy with my day job as a real estate agent, so it's been crucial to set up the management in this way.
Yeah. Now, why not just hire a property management company and outsource it? Would that be easier, or do you like having more control over it? Or is it maybe even cheaper doing it this way?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've thought about outsourcing the property management, but I've found that it's a lot cheaper to retain the property management, and most importantly, I have more control over the properties.
Yeah.
And it's just been a better experience overall. I have worked with property management before with a couple other partnerships, and I found that retaining the management within the family and sort of doing my own self-management has been a much better process.
Now, every market is different. And, I know in some markets there's a lot of properties and it's easy to find rentals. In other markets, the inventory is really tight and there's not much for sale. Now, you've bought a lot of properties over the last couple of years. Has the inventory or has finding properties been a challenge for you, or is your market just full of deals?
It's definitely been a challenge. Columbus has been growing a lot over these past several years, and there's been an influx of investors overall, but especially in Columbus. I would say only about 30% of the deals that I've purchased have been deals that have been listed on the market, MLS deals, and the rest have been off market. So I focus really hard on trying to source these off market deals. I'm calling countless different owners, seeing if they'd consider any sort of off market transaction. So to answer your question, it has been difficult, but I am a strong believer that it's possible in Columbus and it's possible in any market.
Yeah. So 70% of the properties you bought, you're finding on your own, like just from, it sounds like you're cold calling potential sellers.
Yeah, so I'm doing a lot of cold calls. I'm in a brokerage where we have a lot of agents who are focused on cold calls. So if I don't source the deal, there are some other agents in my office who are sourcing these off-market deals that I'll buy as well. But yeah, mostly from cold calls. I've done cold text before. I haven't done mailers. Haven't really done cold knocking. So most of my success has come from the cold calls and the cold text.
That's, I think, a smart way to find deals. And it just goes to show the deals are out there. And if you're not seeing them on the MLS, you got to go out and dig them up, because there's people out there that want to sell or need to sell. Like, what would you say the situation is like for most of your sellers? Are they people that are maybe about to get foreclosed on, or maybe they've inherited a property? Is there like a certain type of person that you're finding that is open to you calling them directly?
It takes a lot of calls to get one person who's willing to talk to me. And I wouldn't say there's any specific situation that a lot of these off-market sellers are in. It's all relationship based. So typically I'm making 100 calls before I might start to develop a relationship with one seller. Typically, I find that sellers can be a little more motivated to sell off market because they don't have to deal with any sort of commissions. They don't have to list it on the market and have 10, 20, 30 different buyers walking through the property. But the number one reason that I believe I've been able to source a lot of these off-market deals is just the relationship that I've developed with these off-market sellers.
And how are you building that relationship? Is it just calling them and getting them comfortable with you? And this is maybe something that plays out over time?
Exactly. I'm just calling them. I'm trying to develop a relationship before I'm trying to buy their property.
Okay.
They're probably getting 10, 20, 30 other calls every week or month. But what's going to stand out from me, from the other buyers and the other interested parties in their property, is it and what I found is it's typically the tone of my voice. I'm not coming in with a super sell pitch like, hey, let me buy your property. I'm coming in, seeing if they'd ever consider it, seeing what they like about their property. I'm telling them my story, how I got started in real estate, and connecting more so on a human level.
Okay. Yeah. All right, that makes sense. So you're putting in the work. I'm sure that's a lot of time you're putting into finding deals, but it's working. I mean, you're finding properties this way. Now, I'm curious about the financing. So to buy as many properties as you've bought in such a short period of time, I assume that you need a lot of money. Did you have a lot of money when you were starting?
Starting off, no. I started off with pretty much zero money. I was able to partner on my first duplex, and I own 25 units with that same partner. But how I structured the partnership on this first property is, one, I found the deal, and two, I did all of the work. All my partner did was bring the down payment. And since then, I've been able to invest a lot more of my own capital, which has helped me get to the point where I'm at today. But starting off, absolutely not. I had pretty much $0 to my name.
Now, are you at this point, I mean, you've got 50 rent checks coming in every month. Are you taking that money and reinvesting it into buying more rentals, or are you spending that cash flow?
I pretty much reinvest every penny I make. I'm at the point with my day job where my needs are met. I've got my mortgage paid. I've got my car payments paid. I don't need to be taking out of the rental income. So I'm reinvesting all that rental income into upgrades to the properties, purchasing new properties, CapEx, and different things like that.
Well, let's take a look at one of your deals and kind of make sense on how you've built your portfolio. So tell me about this property we're going to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. So the deal that I chose to talk about here was a package of 2 duplexes that were side by side. These 2 duplexes were actually on the market, listed for $75,000 each. Each duplex had 2 beds and 1 bath, and they were in really rough shape, which I knew posed a good opportunity for value add. So these deals were listed, I think it was like a Wednesday evening, and I knew that these deals were going to get a lot of attention the next day and probably get bid up quite a bit. I knew my only chance of getting these deals in contract was getting an offer in before my competition, right? So the night those were listed, I went out to the site, I looked at the properties. 3 out of the 4 units were vacant and boarded up, and just in a mess. But I knew that there's money to be made, so I ended up making an offer, waived my inspection contingency to kind of motivate the seller to move forward with us, and ended up getting the deals and contracts.
Now, was it scary to make an offer on a property like that? It's going to need a lot of work. Like, did you feel nervous making that offer with no inspection contingency, knowing that, maybe there could be some serious problems with this property? Or were you comfortable with it, knowing that with the property in that condition, it's probably going to need a lot of work?
I was pretty comfortable putting the offer in with no inspection contingency. Both of these properties were on slab foundations, and I knew this area very well. I knew the properties on slab foundations 99% of the times had no foundation issues. I already knew that I was going to be fully renovating all of the units, so I didn't really expect anything unexpected.
Okay.
And with that said, it was at a price where even if there were some extra expenses that came up along the road that I didn't account for, the numbers would still make sense for what I was after.
Okay. All right. So $75,000 a duplex. So you're all in at $150 for the purchase price. How much did it end up costing to fix everything up?
I ended up spending around $75,000 on the renovation.
Is that what you projected it would be?
Honestly, I was expecting a little bit lower. I would say closer to $65,000, but we ended up doing a little more on the finishes.
Okay. Okay, cool. All right. Well, that's not too bad. So, all right.
Not bad at all.
So $150 on the purchase, $75 to fix it up. So you're all in at $225. And so what happened next?
Yeah, so I think our game plan initially was to hold on to the properties and just let them cash flow. So we ended up renting out the units around $925 a unit. At this point, the market was very strong. There was a huge appetite for multifamily properties, and there was another property that I had my eyes on. So what we ended up doing is we ended up listing the properties for $400,000, ended up getting that amount and went into a 1031 exchange. And, from there, we ended up purchasing 2 more properties from the proceeds.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of cool. All right, so you bought the properties, you fixed them up, you rented it out, And then when you sold it, it sounds like you made about $175,000.
Yeah, yep. And one thing that I forgot to mention is we didn't buy these duplexes cash. We bought these duplexes with hard money. So our down payment when we initially bought these two duplexes was only around $30,000. So we're all in $30,000, and now we have about $175,000 to play with.
Wow. Wow. Okay. So, all right. So you've got $175,000 now. I guess this is probably where it gets exciting because you were getting into the first set of properties with, just a little down payment, but now you've got a lot of money. What did you do with that?
Yeah. So, ended up buying a 6-unit property in a really nice part of Columbus and bought a duplex that was more so a fixer-upper. The 6-unit was pretty much turnkey. We just had to stabilize the rents. But we ended up also purchasing the duplex where we could continue with the value add.
Okay. So the property, the first property, the 6-unit, you said it's in a nice part of town. Would you say that's like an A-class property or a B-class property?
I would say definitely an A-class neighborhood.
Okay.
For the six unit, and then for the duplex, that was more in like a B- area.
Okay. Was the 6-unit already rented out when you bought it?
They had 5 out of the 6 units rented out. I believe the average rent at the time was around $1,000. All of those units were 2-bed, 2.5 baths with a 1-car garage per unit.
Okay. And then the other duplex you had to fix up?
Correct. Yep. So 1 unit was vacant, 1 unit was rented on the duplex when we purchased it. The occupied unit moved out, and we ended up doing about $100,000 renovation on that duplex.
Okay. So did all of the money come from the sale of that first property?
It did. Yep. So we were able to get both the duplex and the 6-unit with $0 out of pocket. Besides our initial down payment for the 2 duplexes that we bought, sold in 1031.
I mean, that's really, really pretty awesome. I mean, when you think about what you just did, I mean, you bought a property, you've basically fixed it up and flipped it, and now you've got better properties that I assume you're bringing in more rent with the new properties.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Our rents right now between the 2 properties are just over $10,000 a month.
$10,000 a month. Okay, let's talk about some of the expenses on this. So, how much is your mortgage payment?
So the mortgage payment for both these properties is just around $6,000, and that includes the PITI.
Okay, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. Do you have any other expenses you have to pay, like maybe water or trash pickup?
So thankfully, the 6-unit is completely submetered when we bought it, and then we also submetered for water. Sorry, and then for the duplex, we also submetered that for water. Typically in Columbus, the gas and electric meters are already separate, so the tenants already paid gas and electric, and then when we had new leases signed, we had it where the tenants paid all utilities. So there's no utilities in our name. We account for about $320, about $400 a month, something around there, for maintenance and expenses or repairs. But those are our 2 expenses on the property: the PITI and the maintenance.
So $400 is what you budget for repairs, and is that about what the expenses have been? About $400 a month?
There's months where, maybe it's $600 and there's other months where it's $200, but you typically it averages around that $400 a month.
So then your cash flow is you got the $10,200 in rents, your $6,000 mortgage payment, about $400 for maintenance. Now, what about vacancy? Do you have much vacancy there?
in this A-class neighborhood with the 6 unit, the vacancy rates are very low. We'll occasionally have to lease a unit, but typically these tenants want to stay for 3-5+ years. So the vacancy rates are very low in this area. The duplex is pretty similar, but on average, I typically account for about 5% vacancy.
Okay. All right. So as long as everything is leased up, you've got $3,800 a month in cash flow. And if you've got a vacancy, you might have a few months where that's a little bit lower. But I would say that's a home run. You're making $3,800 a month on a property that you've got very little money into.
Yeah. We love the deal. Not all of our deals are this good. There were hiccups along the way with renovations and sticking to timelines, especially with the duplex that we 1031'd into. That renovation ended up going, probably $40,000 over. But we're really happy with the results.
It's really pretty incredible what's possible with rental properties. Great job, Zeke. I'm really happy for you. If anybody is interested in learning more about investing in Columbus, Zeke is a full-time realtor. He works with a lot of investors. I think he'd be a great resource for you. I've got his contact information on the website. You can find it at rentalincomepodcast.com/episode 427. I'd like to thank today's sponsors for making this episode possible. First, I'd like to thank Rent Savvy. Rent Savvy is the first and only nationwide tenant placement service for filling your rental property with a quality tenant for a one-time flat fee. You can register your rental property for free and learn more about their service at rentsavvy.co. That's rentsavvy, SAVVY.co. I'd also like to thank Chaley Ridge at Ridge Lending Group. If you're looking to buy a rental property, whether you're just getting started or you want to add to your portfolio, reach out to Chaley. She's a nationwide lender, and her specialty is helping investors finance rental properties. She has a ton of different loan programs, and she can find something customized to you for your situation. If you want to find out more, you can reach out to Chaley personally at ridgelendinggroup.com. That's RIDGE lendinggroup.com, NMLS 42056. Thank you so much for checking out the podcast today. If this is your first time here, make sure you hit that follow or subscribe button. I put out a new interview every single Tuesday. And if you're subscribed to the show, you'll get notified as soon as the next episode comes out. My name is Dan Lane, and this has been the Rental Income Podcast.